Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Kit Karson, and I'm going to make this short. If you've ever wondered how to murder somebody, there's a good chance we not only cover it, but explain why it might be good for you. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, finally, welcome to the David Watson podcast, because I had to cancel last time, and thank you again for allowing me to rearrange. I do appreciate it. And how are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here.
And hopefully we'll get this done smoothly and quickly, so you can, well, not too quickly, I hope, but quickly enough that you can still get home today. And so just quickly, how many books do you have in the sequel?
Well, 5 are published almost. The 5th one is at the final editing and designing the cover, and it's about to come out. We're thinking July sometime. Haven't set the exact date. So 5.
5. And did it always, because there's a question I'm going to get to in a minute, but did it always, like when you first wrote the first book, was there always like, I'm going to do a few of these?
Oh, yeah. I plan to do as many as I can until I run out of ideas.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, and then I'll start a different series, different characters.
So where do your ideas come from?
My head.
I walked straight into that, really.
Yeah.
But where does the inspiration for the ideas come from?
Well, I try to do things that are relative to, I live in Western Montana in a small community. And so I try to do things that are relative to this area, things that are important to the people here. The first one was about land grab is what it's called. And it's about people trying to come in and buy up the land and develop it into high scale resorts. And so that's a real concern where we live. It's a beautiful area, and it's something we're going through right now.
Explain it. I've heard about, I don't know where it was, but I heard something and that came under the kind of the title of a land grab, and it was saying that people were, I think this was in California, but if I've got that wrong, my apologies. It was basically people were getting sued by people trying to buy their land, and it was effectively the process of somebody was saying, like, we want to buy your land and it's not for sale. So they were finding ways to take them to court because they knew that, well, you're not going to be able to afford the legal fees, and we will just keep taking you to court for various different reasons until you can't afford it, and then that's fine, we'll offer you the money we want for the land.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of how that's experienced, isn't it? Because, when these people come in and just try and buy up all the land, it actually is really horrible, because they see something that, generations of people have sort of created as a community, and like, oh, this is really great. So, but now we want it so we can profit from it. And
Exactly. Yeah. So we look at our area, which we've been here for generations, and we start to imagine that the mountains covered with houses.
Yeah.
And it could happen. It's coming.
Yeah, I think it is. There's various areas in the UK where people talk about, property developers come in, before you know it, there's 2,000 homes outside your town that only had 500 homes originally, or 600 homes, but now it has an extra 2,000 because somebody sold the land.
Exactly. Well, recently, in the little town where we live, it's tiny. There's, less than 300 people. Someone sold like 300 acres and plans on putting houses on that, which will double the size of the town.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of concern about, the sewer systems and water and, just, the...
Yeah, but it is that there is this kind of continuing expansion. And look, the town that I live in today, I've lived here, I think, 28 years. I think it's about that. But I've been going to school here since 1982. So, but we didn't move here and into the town until a few years later. That town has probably quadrupled in size.
Wow.
And it's not any better for it.
No, no.
You know?
Oh, I understand completely. So, yeah, so that's what the first book is about. It's Russian mafia coming in, which a few people said, oh, that's not realistic. It is realistic. There is Russian mafia in this area, and they were coming in and trying to steal the land because it was in a trust and not available for sale. So, like you were talking about, they were trying to go around the legalities and bully their way.
Yeah, we have a similar thing in the UK where people just keep reapplying for planning permission because they know eventually people will run out of time, energy, and money to keep fighting it. And it's I don't know I don't know what the right answer is, but I think there has to be a point that when if enough local people get together and say it's not what we want, it's not happening. And
Yeah, but
once you've had that meeting at a local council level or local government level, whatever it is, it should just be, yep, okay. You can't apply to do this again.
exactly, yeah. In my area, all those houses they were planning on putting up, the locals are saying the septic systems just can't work.
Yeah.
It can't handle that many houses. So instead of 200, they'll probably put in 40, which still doubles the size of the town. But it's if they have the money to buy the land and the landowners are willing,
Yeah.
there's not a lot you can do.
No, there isn't. And there's always that argument that if somebody owns the land, they have the right to sell it to make their money.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it does.
And that's how I feel.
Yeah.
It's their property. They have a right to do what they want with it, even if I don't like it.
Yeah, first and foremost, I agree with that completely. It's their money,
Yeah.
It's their land, and they have a right to sell it if that's what they want. But but it is like you say, it's a shame that we end up always down this road. So, one of the things I read in the literature sent over to me, and I want to just talk a little bit. It said that you had an epiphany, and because you know that write what you love or write what you know. And then you had an epiphany. Could you just explain a bit about that?
Well, yeah, I would be when I wanted to write for decades, and when I finally decided, okay, now is the time, I was stuck because people would say, well, write what you know, and I would think, well, I don't know much,
It's true.
That would go in a book, I guess. I was like, oh, what do I know? And then I was reading the MC Beaton books. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They are there's two series. One takes place in the Cotswolds in England. It's a woman private investigator, and the other one takes place in Scotland, and it's a Scottish Bobby in a small village. And I just love these books. You fall in love with the characters. They're a little quirky. And it's very much based in that area. And then it dawned on me, this is what I want to write. I want to write a series. And I decided to do with a small town sheriff and all the quirky characters in our little town. And then I thought, and I didn't even really realize how much I knew about living in the small town until after I wrote the first couple of books and started getting comments from people saying, oh, you nailed it. This is small town Montana. I thought, well, this is what I know. This is what I've lived, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's strange, isn't it? Because people will say, I don't know what to write, and I always say to people, is it factual or is it fictional? And if they're like fictional, I said, you make it up.
Exactly.
But they spend so much time getting tripped up over. Yeah, but I don't know what to. No, but it's fictional. You just make it up.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's not a true story. It's just But when you say it like that, it sounds so easy. But it's not. It's because, and I think the other thing that people, whoever, when people are trying to write a book, the bit they really struggle on is the finished article before they've even put pen to paper.
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm one of those pantsers. I have the basic idea in my head, the basic what it's going to be about, and then I just make it up as I go along. Sometimes as you're writing, what you have in your head that's going to work, you get to that spot and it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But, forget that. I've thrown away complete chapters. You also hear that kill your darlings thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to just say, you know what? It might have been good writing, but it doesn't work in this book. And I toss it away. Sometimes I put it in a little file to save it in case, I decided it'll work later on in a different spot. But I never know how it's going to end.
Yeah, because people do get caught up in, and I think it's probably the most difficult process of writing, because I've never spoken to a writer who doesn't say the same about you have to learn how to throw things out. You have to learn how to be quite savage with your work, and just, no, that doesn't work, or it doesn't sound right. But you also have to not worry about the ideas will just flow when they're ready to flow. And every writer, anybody that's ever written a book will tell you that. But when you try and explain that to somebody, they're like, I don't know where to start. It doesn't matter if you start in the middle of the book. There's this weird thing that I've always tried to understand, which is the way that the brain writes things for you, and that it doesn't care where the ending is, the middle is, or the beginning is. Whichever bit is shouting to you loudest is the bit you have to start writing with.
Yeah. And sometimes I do a lot of writing in my head.
Yeah.
I write these whole scenes in my head, and then I forget if I've actually written them down. So I read through the book, it's like, oh, I forgot to actually write that one in.
Yeah.
Go back and.
I used to keep loads and loads of notes on my phone and then just go through them. And then, like, okay, yeah, I didn't do that. I did do that. And it was, it just, for trying to explain to people this that there isn't a wrong way to do it.
Yeah. I don't really I know people have different ways their minds work and they process. And so there are the people who have to outline everything exactly. I just don't get that. To me, puts me in a box.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe for a nonfiction book, you would need to know the chapters and things, but
yeah, because that's the point, isn't it? If it's non-fiction, if it's not fiction, it's going to have some historical context, and that needs to be in order. But if you're making it up, it just doesn't matter.
You make it up as you go along. Yeah. So you get it.
Yeah. It is. You just exactly that. When you said you always wanted to write, when do you remember? Like, did you, as a child, did you kind of have an idea that you liked writing?
I think I had. I think I was a good writer when I was a child, but I didn't really get it. Just, I didn't. And then, say decades ago, I actually sat down and started to write not a the psychology thriller.
Yep.
I'm not saying it right. And then I thought, no, do I really want to put that out there? Then when I was doing my master's degree, and my education is in science, so I was getting a master's in science, and I was writing these scientific papers. And I thought, I love doing this. I love the process of writing, putting the words together, the research. And that's when it really hit me, you really need to write.
Yeah.
But writing scientific papers wasn't the end the end game with that. It was just another way that I realized what I wanted to do. And then I started through the process of, what do I want to write? What kind of, I wanted to do fiction and probably mystery, that sort of thing. So yeah. I finally got it.
Do you remember the day you decided to just sit down and do it?
The day?
Yeah.
No, I know it was springtime, about this time of year. That's 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, that I just just sat down and it's like I woke up that morning,
Yeah.
with this epiphany and thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then I started letting it go through my head and sat down on my computer and um, started in. Yeah.
And do
So,
you find that once you're there, it starts to flow easily?
yeah, I don't have a lot of trouble with writer's block. I hear that a lot. Oh, the writer's block thing. Right now in my head, I'm going through book six, deciding, trying to figure out how I'm going to do the murder and stuff. But it's not really a block, I know.
It's just, I can imagine somebody just taking this one little snippet. Yeah, I'm just going through my head at the moment, trying to decide how to do the murder.
Did you ever watch that series Castle? I think it's on BBC. It's called Castle. And anyway, at one point, there's this quote. I'll see if I can get it right. It said, the only people who sit around thinking about how to commit murder are psychopaths and writers.
But
So,
it is, isn't it? It's just a funny concept that
mhm,
people don't always appreciate. That most crimes, if you think about it, are,
mhm.
and I don't want to overgeneralize, but they're crimes of passion. You know, and then you get premeditated crimes, where somebody is actually thinking about what they want to do, etc., etc. And often somebody gets killed because they interrupt that process. It was never part of the original concept.
Yeah.
But if you write anything, and it's like you're doing, you literally sit down and plot out a murder,
Hmm.
and then how the murderer tries to evade being caught, and how
Hmm.
whoever is after them catches them. And it's a really like psychopathic,
Hmm.
pleasurable thing where you've got to thrash out the details about what works, what doesn't work, as well
Uh-huh.
as paint the picture well enough that you don't give too much away in the story. But do you know what I mean? Because there's that thing, isn't there, with with books that you don't let people fill in the pieces for themselves. Let them picture it. Let them imagine
Hmm.
it. So you can put that somebody, they took a hammer and beat down with rage, but you
Uh-huh.
can't go stroke for stroke what they did. But you can paint the entire picture, or give all
Uh-huh.
of the instructions for somebody to paint a picture. And you can't do that unless you devote a lot of time to imagining how you kill somebody.
Exactly. So my husband's in medicine, so, middle of the night, I'll like wake him up and say, hey, what would happen if I shoved a fork in someone's temple? And he like, do you have a fork?
Yeah,
What are you thinking about doing right now?
this is it. And in all the right places, every time a book gets reviewed, people read, it's this way of thinking is celebrated.
Hmm.
But
Exactly. Yeah.
but you actually woke up your husband, because if I stab somebody in the temple with a fork, how does that work? What should I expect?
Yeah. I really did that. That's a true story.
Oh no, I believe you. I believe you, because this is how the brain works. This is how it works when
Mhm.
people are writing thrillers. When people are writing, and because you know that you know that somebody out there will say, well, that's not true. That's not how that happens. You can't do that. And
You have to be realistic. Yeah.
yeah, you do. There's only kind of so much you can. I mean, you can kind of make up whatever you want, but if you want it to be, in terms of context, you want somebody to be able to sit in and imagine that this is an actual real town with an actual real event.
Hmm.
Then it has to be actually factually correct.
Yeah.
It.
Well, and I want someone who knows better, like someone in medicine or
Mm,
in law enforcement who happens to be reading the book. I don't want them to say, "Oh, this is not realistic. This is going to happen."
yeah, no, I
I,
agree. I agree, because there's something that always bugs me, that many years ago we have a scheme in the UK, and many years ago, I used to be what's called an appropriate adult, and that would be you'd sit in on police interviews for people who either had mental health or adults with mental health or disabilities, sort of learning disabilities, or children under 18 but not in social services, and it effectively mean their parents refused to come to the police station to sit with them. So I would sit. So you had to have a little bit of legal understanding. And what used to bugs me even to this day is the things that you see on TV that you're just not allowed to do. It's just not true. And you just like that's you can't do that. You know, the very fact that if and I know enough a little bit about, you know, even law in America, that when I see some of these TV programs, you just like, if that went to court, the judge would throw it out for no probable cause.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people watch those shows and think it's real. Yeah.
And this is it. And it's just, and you're just like, where's the probable cause? You had no reason to approach, you had no reason to arrest. And yeah, so I'm with you all the way. It's, when you're doing things, it's really frustrating if you find out, actually, no, that can't happen. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have. Because I remember, again, somebody you've seen films. I was working at this police officer's house many years ago, and he was, and I'm probably going to get this a bit wrong because it was a long time ago, but he says when a house has been completely cleaned after a murder, like a gross murder, he says, and they come along and they spray forensic spray. He says, there's nothing there. He said they've bleached the entire room. He says, 9 times out of 10, he said that's why we're convinced a murder has taken place in the bathroom, because it's so spotlessly clean. It's just, it's a professional job. He said this idea that you can go in after somebody's washed it all down, spray something, and it shows you the blood splatter. Complete lie. It's a complete fabrication.
Wow.
Yeah. He said,
so, but there, like you said, that's the clue that no normal people would have their house that clean. Completely.
That's what exactly, almost word for word, how he put it is. A normal person just wouldn't clean their house like that. He said, because you would, scan the ceiling and it's spotless. He said, whoever washes, when does somebody wash the ceiling in the bathroom? Do you know
Nobody I know.
No. And he said it's because a proper contractor. He said just like the people the police hire to clean up a house after somebody's been killed, they spray the entire house with bleach. Why? He gets rid of everything. He says, but
the odors. And,
He said, but you see it in the film, and it's right. We've got this magical spray that just gets, and this is like, things, details like that do, as I've gotten older, really do bug me. You're like,
now I'm curious if someone has bleached everything like that, how law enforcement, I mean, they know instinctively that the crime was committed or it wouldn't have been cleaned up like that, but can they use that for proof? I mean, it's conjecture.
No. The couple of reasons that spring to mind, but one is it's literally every police officer's biggest nightmare. We bloody know you did it, but we can't prove it because there's just no evidence. The actual physical forensic isn't there. Secondly, anybody could argue that the previous occupant had an OCD for cleaning. There you go.
Yeah. So people get away with murder.
Yeah. Because it's not a criminal offence to clean the house. So unless you have some physical body to, that you can match DNA to, it's impossible.
Yeah, I could use that in a book.
You could. That'd be because somebody with OCD would. As soon as you said that reminded me. You know the children's author Roald Dahl.
Yes.
He used to write for a TV show called Tales of the Unexpected, which was murder mysteries and stuff like that. Right?
Oh wow.
Yeah. He had a really dark mind in all areas, And I don't know if it was an episode he wrote, but there was this episode where the police come round because the husband had been killed and he'd been hit in the head, and they were trying to find kind of what had hit him in the head, and it was this ham. This big ham. The wife had hit him with a ham and knocked him down the stairs or something. But she then cooked it, and she then
there's no evidence on the ham.
Well, it's not just that. She then sort of said to the police officers, "Look, I know this is strange, but it's only going to go to waste. You guys want it." and the police officers ate the evidence. and
Oh, I love it.
yeah, because that's how those crazy. The best ideas always come. They're always simple. I think it's that complicated. You know, like you say, if somebody's got OCD, just let them clean, and they'll get rid of everything.
Let them clean. Yeah, invite your OCD friend over and have them clean for you. I guess.
Yeah.
But I like that sometimes the simplest answers, because people are looking for complicated things, and it's the simplest thing. Yeah,
it is, because that's like you say, for plots and stuff like that. It's if you're trying to get away with murder. This is going to be a great podcast on it. How to get away with murder. How not to get caught. People do try to complicate it. It's there's a thing that they teach in like in body language, and like how to read people, and for context, the actual word context is really, really important. So please don't think that this is like, if somebody does this, it must mean X, Y, and Z. It's not as simple as that. But as a general rule of thumb, the way that you spot a liar is because they give you too much detail.
Oh. Okay.
So if I asked you if you did X, Y, and Z, your instant response, if it wasn't you, was no.
No.
Because your brain doesn't think it has to hide anything. Just no. Whereas somebody,
but if they start explaining things,
as a general, other context has to come into place. But as a general rule of, because somebody can turn and say, "Where were you?" and that requires an explanation. But if somebody says, "Did you take my lunch today?" If you didn't, you'd be like, "No."
No.
Whereas it is, and that's often why the police will ask closed questions and then pause. Because
and let the silence.
Yeah, because the psychology behind it is that if you say no and you're lying and somebody pauses, they think they have to fill in the space.
Gotcha.
Because you're actually going to think about it. Sorry.
And that's the sane people. And then you get the insane people. Yes. And I've always thought that they make good liars, like sociopaths or schizophrenics, because they truly believe what they're saying, the schizophrenics. And then the sociopaths, they have no guilt.
No.
They have no shame. And so the people that feel like they have to explain have a little bit of shame there, a little bit of guilt. And so then they try to explain themselves away. The sociopaths don't.
No. And if you're telling the truth and the answer is no, your brain can't think of something to make up. So the pause just is, you just stare at them and say, and because you've got nothing, you literally have nothing to add. So you don't try to convince anybody of anything.
Aren't people fascinating?
Oh, amazing. They are just brilliant people. And it's funny because we can't help ourselves as a species, even when we really get into the psychology of things, how the brain works, how the subconscious works. It's never a blanket solution for everybody. It's never the same for everyone. And no matter how well we think we know each other, we never see the clear behavior patterns that we have.
Yeah, we cannot put people in a box.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And but it does fascinate me that, like you say, the way the mind works, and the way that people try to get out of things.
And sometimes it's so dumb. Yeah. Like little kids, it's kind of childish.
but that's kind of what happens, isn't it? You kind of sink into some childhood state. And because psychopaths and the sociopaths are really they're fascinating. I had a chap on here, and he wrote a book. I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book, and he'd managed to speak to 3 actual hitmen, and one was the son of a hitman, and these were proven hitman. One, I think, was ex-Israeli Mossad or something, or ex-CIA or something, and like genuine confirmed kills. But the one that fascinated both him and I was this guy that he was basically a hitman for a government agency, like for about 30 years or something, retired, and was teaching little league soccer as a coach. Like, just like, and another one was a taxi driver or bus driver or something. He said, and the craziest thing about these people is, he said they're all retired, but once upon a time, if I'd gone round to visit them, they would, can I get you a cup of tea or cup of coffee? And they'd make and they could be in the middle of doing something, and they'd go downstairs into a basement, assassinate whatever was going on, and then come up and make a cup of coffee for you like nothing had happened. He said,
I had someone tell me one time, the actual person, and he was talking about the war. And he went, he was a prisoner of war, went through horrible things, but he said he had no guilt about the people he killed because he said, I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
It was my job.
Yeah.
And so, when people would try to degrade him for what he had done in the war, he says that's what he would tell him. It's like, I don't know what your problem is. I was just doing my job. Yeah. I'm not a horrible person. So those hitmen men, same thing. They're just doing their job.
Yeah,
matter of fact.
That's kind of what it was. It was just like nothing personal whatsoever. But I always, my mind always goes off in strange places like that, because I can imagine this little league soccer coach and some mum or dad getting angry because he doesn't pick the son or the daughter or whatever, starts shouting, raving, blah blah blah, and and apparently this guy is like the nicest, calmest, politest guy you could meet, but is a stone cold killer.
Do they know who they're yelling at? But would he actually, are they in any danger? Because 100. The people he kills is part of his job. These are his other life.
I would argue you're in incredible danger, because if you manage to press that button that he doesn't like, because there's a part of him inside, no matter how calm and calculated he is, knows you're not a threat to him. While you're threatening him, what you're going to do X, Y, and Z, you're not a threat in any way, shape, or form. And there is always going to be that. Do you know when, like, in everyday life, sometimes something happens or somebody says something to you, and it's water off a duck's back, you don't notice. You're in a good place, whatever. And then other times something almost exactly the same will happen, but it just gets under your skin, triggers something, and you have a massive internal reaction where, and that will always be the risk with a person like that.
Yeah.
You might
and these parents have no idea.
Exactly. And you might just press that one button. And then what you won't realise is that when you go to bed that night, that's the last time you ever went to bed.
Yeah. So there's a good life lesson. Be very, very careful what you say to who and when, because the most even-tempered person might be a closet psychopath or a killer.
But this is it. So if you've spent your entire life, all you've been trained to do is kill people,
it would be no big deal for you.
It's the same as doing a podcast with a person. You just, do you know what I mean? This is what I do. So, you write books. It's just you're going to go home and maybe you'll start writing a book again. And do you know what I mean? It's just like, this is what I do. I'm going to think up a murder, and I'm going to think up how he avoids getting caught, how she gets caught. What it's just part of a process, isn't it? That you give no thought to whatsoever.
No, none at all.
And that's what fascinates me about people like that, because I just I just can't imagine it. I just
I know. Yeah, like there's got to be a little bit something off with them, because even though it's just a job, I mean, I've never actually murdered someone, so I don't know how that would be. But
you say you've never murdered somebody, but
you've
never been caught.
I've never been caught.
but it is.
Yeah, can we take that clip out?
But it is, isn't it? Because and that must
Yeah.
also be what is fascinating when you do the books, because you can explore all of
Hmm.
those.
Oh, all the psychology behind it, what pushes certain people over the edge, like those people, what would push them over the edge from it just being a job to like, okay, that person just triggered me. I'm tired of putting up with them. I'm just going to take them out,
Yeah.
because they're human. They're human, they're just regular people. So they have that instinct where we all have sometimes where like, oh, I just can't put up with that person anymore.
Because you do hear about it sometimes on like the on the news or the internet or something, where some random bloke minding his own business, and somebody stops him in the shop or tries to mug him or burgle his house, and they end up in, like getting absolutely smashed to pieces, and then it comes out, Mr. So and So, ex special forces from somewhere.
Yeah.
Been retired 20, 30 years, but he's never lost that ability to fight in a particularly well-trained manner under tight scrutiny. Yeah, and some, like I say, innocent, I was about to say, some poor helpless victim, but somebody
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
just, some undesirable, who just thought he was going to take a quick opportunity to grab something quickly, and ends up messing with somebody that's a trained killer. But just, they've had the switched off for 25 years because they retired, and you just inconveniently turned it back on in a split second, and you broke into their house, and they went
Oh, I'm gonna
full
start looking
Operation
at people
Special
differently.
Forces.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You never know. You never know what people's history is.
No.
Yeah.
And do you think about the history of your characters?
Yeah, I do. Because we're all affected by our childhood,
Yeah.
you know, and the experiences we had, and I like to look at people, what motivates them. In the second book, I don't want to give too much away, but there is a lot. I delve into the childhood of, well, which was abusive, the abusive childhood of one of the main characters.
Because that's always an interesting thing as well, because that fascinates me with people. Because we used to believe, and some people still argue for it, is you're a product of your environment. But then they discovered when you have Siamese twins, there's been enough studies on Siamese twins now, identical in every single way, including their backgrounds and how they grew up, and they're completely different.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, you can see it in families.
yeah,
Children who were raised in the exact same family, same parents, same experience, and completely different people.
because that's what fascinates me, when it's when you see somebody that had a rough childhood, an abusive childhood, whatever it was, you always understand if something went wrong. If in the laterhood as an adult they behaved a certain way, this is their childhood. But the other person who just comes out of that and has no reason to be, but is all light and kindness, and you're like,
Yeah.
how did all of these things happen to you? And you're all light
Well,
and kindness.
I think it's a lot of it's personality. Like we're born with our basic personality. Some people are maybe shy and reserved, some people are outgoing, but our basic personality and how we react to situations has a lot to do with it. You have the people who are just calm and they let the stuff roll off, or maybe they're introspective, they think it out, they don't take it personally. And there's the people who just strive. They're always driven to
Yeah.
to do better, do more, and those people succeed. And then you have, the lazy people who,
Maybe you
it's
do.
like they're born that way sometimes, and they have no desire um, to work hard or do anything beyond the being a slug.
But that interests me as well, because when you were saying that, I was thinking about the amount of times I've seen somebody really successful not do well at something. That doesn't matter. They have an entire career in business of excelling. One business fails. It doesn't matter that They made a business that made 100 million. The first business that fails, everyone goes on about the failure, and even to the point they'll say, ridicule them on the internet and say, well, the man whose business failed, what do you know about anything? And you're just like, mate, you have never achieved anything. And you see it with sports people, can excel at the highest level, and then just on one occasion, the final whatever, they don't quite get over the line, and everyone's like, bottled it, this, that, and the other. It's just like this person has won 10,000 times in their career, and you're selecting this one. And the thing that I find fascinating about that is it doesn't matter. You get it when it's people who are really high achievers and can almost mirror the same circumstances, will have the same ridicule for this person. And the person that's never achieved anything and considers, like, what do you want about? One Monday 7 years ago, I got up and had a shave before 7 o'clock in the morning. And it's just
they remember it for 7 years, that one morning you got up.
Suddenly criticizing somebody that's dedicated an entire life and has a stellar career.
Exactly.
But that ridicule can be at any level.
Mm-hmm.
And you just...
Yep. I was listening to a documentary something once about, I think it was in Australia. Anyway, it was about this guy who one summer maybe for a month worked a hard labor job and claimed that he still had the calluses from that. And it was, 30 years ago. But it was just that one month, or maybe it was a week in his life. And he used that his entire life. Well, I did this once,
Yeah. And people,
baffling.
it is, and I find there's kind of a jealousy that if people have that in them, it doesn't matter whether they're wealthy or whether they're poor, and you'll get people with no money who are poor talking about wealth distribution, rich people shouldn't have this, and all of that. And then you'll have really wealthy people who will look at someone else who's wealthier than them, saying they shouldn't have this, and would literally go out of their way to try and undermine them in some way. And you just but then you can have somebody who's got nothing, and it's just like, will wish everybody and anybody a good day. And you can have the billionaire who will see somebody and just, stop their car, go in and help them, and is still best friends with the guy they went to school with, but he's a billionaire now, flies on a private jet, and still hangs out once a week, phones his best mate up from school, because they're still best mates, and every opportunity he gets, he goes round there just so they can drink beers in the garage.
I think some of that maybe is jealousy, I just, if someone has worked hard and made all this money, it's their money. That's how I feel. And even if they haven't, even if they inherited it, lucky for them, nobody else has a right to it.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like you were saying, the way that people's minds work, because everybody is different about everybody.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is just you're born with a jealousy. Some people are, and I've also seen along this lines people who are, no matter how much they do, how well they succeed in life, they have low self-esteem. Yeah. It's like there's nothing that they can ever do good enough in themselves to feel like they've succeeded. And then to be jealous of other people, and you're thinking, what do you have to be jealous about? Look at all you have, all you've done. That's something I don't understand.
You saying that, I do get jealous of people that are laid, that just like, it doesn't matter, it's fine, who can just relax. And you know what I mean, like, if they're having a good day, it's a good day. If they're having a bad day, it's just like, tomorrow may be better. And you just be like, hey, you know what I mean? And I'm genuinely envious of them, because my brain doesn't function like that. It can hold on to things, and I'll overthink, overanalyze, overthink. And when I see people who genuinely, everything is good and bad, is water off a duck's back. It's, they could win the lottery tomorrow. They do. They have that peace, that contentment in their life. And I know it's a horrible thing, but if I could murder somebody to steal that from them, I would.
Would you really?
Yeah, yeah, because they just live in the dream. Because they're not. And what I mean is, because like you were saying, you can be an insecure billionaire, and you can be
Oh,
insecure.
exactly.
You can be an insecure homeless person. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Wherever you are, you just
Yeah,
never, no matter what you do, you never feel secure.
yeah, and you get people who could lose everything tomorrow, and they'll just be like, somebody's having a worse day than me. You'd be like, no, literally no one is having a worse day than you. And they're like, no,
Yeah,
it'll be fine. Something will work out. And
yeah.
they genuinely in their heart are just like, oh, something will work out. It'll be fine. I'm still,
Peaceful.
I'm
Yeah.
still breathing.
Hmm.
And then,
Yeah, I didn't die.
yeah, and then they could be an absolute billionaire and have like anything they could have anything they want. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't want anything.
Yeah, I'll give it all away tomorrow.
Yeah, and I just like, yeah, no, I've decided if I find a way to steal people's contentment, I'm going to start murdering people. I've convinced myself it's a good way to go, just so I can have happiness. But,
Well, if peaceful people start dropping dead around you, we'll know.
but yeah, I mean, but it is because, like you said, I do. Is there anybody in any of the books, any of the characters, when you've started writing about them, have surprised you?
Oh, like I'm writing along. Let me see. So yeah, the mistake I made in okay, so book three, I made the mistake of deciding who was going to be the murderer and how they were going to do it way at the beginning. And by the time I was at the end of the book, it was obvious.
Yeah.
So I had to rearrange, kind of rewrite the chapters, more rearrange, so that people reading the book couldn't figure out who had done it before the end, because that's a huge one in mysteries. You don't want anyone to figure out who did it
Yeah.
until the end. So after that, I decided I can't know. I can't know who did it. Yeah. And so, like book four, I had no idea who was going to be the murderer and their motives and it just kind of flowed. And so, yeah, I was pleased and surprised when the actual murder came around.
I don't know why it's popped into my head, but I'll explain it anyway. Do you know that game where you stick like a post-it note on your forehead of somebody's name or a category? I heard once, and I've tried this out, and it was extremely successful. They say the way to be successful at that is just write the very first thing that comes into your head. They said because everyone else is trying to think of what somebody else won't think of.
They're thinking too hard.
Yeah, they're overthinking everything. So if somebody says, it's got to be a whatever, a president. If Ronald Reagan is the first thing that pops into your head, write that on your head. Just write that down, because everyone else is going to be what president will nobody think of, or and they will they analyze it, and everybody is doing the same, because that must be the hardest thing about writing a murder mystery. Is you have to. The goal is that nobody figures it out until the end.
Mm-hmm. And if you yourself know the answer, you're going to give it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't ever heard anyone else say that. They usually haven't, plotted out, but that's what works for me. If I don't know, then I won't give it away.
Yeah, that's interesting, because
Yeah.
so you're writing the. Are you writing the book then as if everybody is the murderer or if everybody is innocent?
Everybody's could possibly be guilty. Yeah. And that's great, because then you have all these little tangents that your readers are picking up too. It's like, oh, this person could have done it for this reason. That's their motivation. And then someone over here could have too. That's their motivation.
Because those are always, there's two types of murder mysteries that do well, or you do know what I mean, that are always fascinating. The one when you really are at the very end, like, I didn't see that coming. Or the ones where it's revealed at the beginning, and
I don't like that.
no, but like you're then hooked into how are they going to get caught, because everybody's
I see. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it looks like they're going another way, like it's not going to happen. and it's like they're going to get
And then
away.
in the end they get caught. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm actually reading one now that it's like you already knew what happened, and to me that's boring. I
yeah,
just, you know, they're going to get caught, and anyway, so I like that. When my readers say to me, "I did not see that coming," or like when my editor says that, in this last book, number 5, one of her comments in a place was, "I did not see that coming." I'm like, "Yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah." So that's how I know. And like that third book I told you, where I decided who was going to do it. She's the one that said, "I guessed it. I guessed it way off. We've got to fix this."
Yeah.
So yeah, so we did.
So there's a point then. So you're right in the book. At what point do you know? Like, are you like 3/4 of the way, 2/3 through the book? At what point you're just like, okay, I now have to decide. Is that the right way to say it? You have to decide who the killer is?
Yeah, about there. Because the first part of the book, you're setting up all the characters and the murder, how it happened, and then you pull in the different strings of, who could have done it and why. You always have to have some motivation for all these different
Yeah.
characters. And then, yeah, when you're about 3/4 of the way through, you're just like, yeah, that's probably the best person for this. But you still have to keep it secret.
Are you ever kind of like, when you get to that point that, like you say, because you've written the bulk of the book, so now it's just kind of flashing out the details at the end, so
Hmm.
it doesn't get revealed to the end, and it's. Are you ever invested in it being one person and not another?
Um, yeah, yeah, and that's what I have to be careful not to do. That's what I did with that third book. I
Yeah,
I just decided it was this one person, this is why they did it,
yeah,
and I gave it away. So I need to string myself along a little bit.
mm.
Like, okay, I might, right towards the end, I might decide this other person's done it. So I string myself along.
Because it is sometimes that you see it a lot in films, where the nasty character, the character that no one likes,
Hmm.
and everyone's wishing they get their comeuppance, don't. And when they
Yeah, and yeah.
and it ends up being someone else, because the horrible character was just innocent, and it's kind of like, yeah, and I like that sometimes when somebody doesn't get their comeuppance.
So this last book, I had probably decided earlier than usual who had done it and why. Um, but I still left open other people who could have been involved in it, and the person who discovered that person. I still had an idea. It's like I wanted to bring this other character in and have that person discover the murderer, and it just never worked out that way.
Yeah,
And so that never happened. And that's one of those you have to be willing to give up ideas or chapters you've written. You have to say, you know what? I'm at the end of the book. To put that in now would just be awkward and dragging things out, and I'm going to let that go. It was a good idea, but it's just not going to work in this book. Yeah.
have you ever given any thought or explored where the somebody accidentally kills somebody? It might be in one of your books, I don't know, but where they
Hmm.
they kill somebody by accident, but then kind of like, I like that, after they've gotten over the horror, and like they're horrified,
Uh-huh.
they suddenly realize days later they really kind of enjoyed the power of it.
Yeah, there might be one of those in one of my
Yeah.
books.
Okay.
Yeah, where it was an accidental murder, but they didn't feel bad about it, you know.
Because I'm fascinated by, like you and I were saying, I'm just fascinated by how
Hmm.
people think, and there is that time sometimes where people accidentally kill somebody. You know what I mean? Something happened, and then after the murder, they're just like, I need to do this again. Because
Ooh, yeah, yeah, I've seen that. Um, well, in books and things, sometimes it's more of a they lead up to, like, they think they want to murder someone sometime, and then they finally do that first one, and it takes them a long time to work themselves up to that, but then after the first one, it gets easier
Yeah.
and easier and easier and easier.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a part of who they are.
That's what I mean, because then it becomes, it's kind of, it's not the same, but it probably comes from the same area. It almost goes down that sexual kink thing, that once they've kind of crossed a boundary, they can't uncross it.
I wonder if someone would ever accidentally murder. I mean, no plan. It happened. And then after that first accidental murder, maybe they have an initial horror, like, oh, I can't believe they did that. But I think that first accidental could turn them into a serial killer. Like, oh, you know what? I kind of like that. I like that power.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because you can sort of imagine somebody like stumble, and it can be really like completely innocent, like you're stumbling across a car accident, like late at night, middle of the day, whatever, and maybe it's an ex, maybe it was somebody that bullied you, maybe it was somebody that shouted at you 2 weeks before or something, and they need medical assistance, and instead you actually just bleed them out or choke them out, whatever, and then you kind of like, because there's a rage inside or something, maybe they've rear-ended you but have ended up in the accident themselves, even worse, and then it opens a gate, and you can't. And
I wonder if
because then you've got to fight, you kind of fight that urge until you give into it.
I wonder if, okay, so they accidentally kill someone who has treated them badly.
Yeah.
And when you see them dead, they're like, suddenly they have this, maybe after this initial horror, they have this sense of relief. Like, oh, they're gone. I don't have to deal with them anymore. And it's almost exhilarating.
Yeah.
And so like a drug, then they keep killing to feel that
it's almost the vampire analogy, isn't it? You've got the once you've been bitten, if you can't resist that lust for blood,
because you've become a vampire yourself. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, and then no matter how hard you fight, you can't have satisfaction until you kill. And it's kind of, it's a player, isn't it, on everybody's worst secret, the thing you always want to do, but you don't cross the moral boundary. But it's there has to be, when I've like when you read about serial killers or people that have murdered or something like that, for some of them there is it takes them to a place of exhilaration.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a high.
Yeah, because we were talking about the business-like nature of assassins, which can just be nothing, literally nothing personal, and they it's just my job. They don't receive any pleasure from it. They're not embarrassed by it either. But then there's the ones that it gives them a high. It gives them something internal that can't be managed in any other way, and it's a power grab, isn't it? It's taking the ultimate thing from somebody else. And
they might know it's wrong. I mean, some of them might.
Well, that's the dilemma, isn't it? Because
you know it's wrong.
In the build-up, that's the kind of the nemesis they're fighting. Is they know it's morally wrong. It's abhorrent to do this, but then
like addicts.
Yeah, and then something snaps, because maybe it's the person that bullied them, vilified them, embarrassed them, or humiliated, and they're in a vulnerable position. And now, do you know what? I bloody remember you, and I'm going to kind of extract my revenge. When like I said, if you use the car accident analogy, you go over there horrified because you're going to help somebody because they might be dying, and then you see it's somebody that vilified you as a teenager, humiliated you, whatever, and you see them in this really vulnerable state, and something comes over you that you can take control of them now, and you can kind of get redemption and revenge for everything they put you through in high school.
And you can make that choice. Maybe you're in a position where you can either save them or watch them die.
Yeah, or kill them.
Or kill them. Yeah.
Yeah, because it'll just look like it was part of a car accident.
Yeah.
But then once it happens and you've done it, instead of you getting kind of like remorse and guilt, you like, I want to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you
And
have,
then you go find other people who have wronged you.
well, this is where the dilemma comes in it, because you might not have anyone else. So you've got to start selecting victims.
Yeah. Maybe you see people who you see abusing other people, like you were abused.
Yeah, then
So
it's,
you think, okay, that's a bad person. They're a bully. I'm going to take them
and
out.
there's my justification.
Yes. Yes, like a superhero, but
Yeah, but that's it, isn't it? That's where they are in their mind.
yeah.
But it
They're a
comes
superhero.
from the pleasure. They will convince themselves it's a moral high ground, but it's
The
not.
satisfaction.
Yeah, that they're chasing that kind of that high that they can only get from taking a life. Is yeah.
Yeah. And the moral high ground, people have their different ideas of morality. Some of them, like maybe to us, we're looking at this person with this idea of morality, and we're like, yeah, that's just twisted. That's wrong. But in their mind, it's not.
That's yeah, and it's yeah. The moral compass for everybody is a strange thing. Just two more questions, just quickly, because we've already been talking for about an hour and 10 minutes.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yay!
What are the books, and where can people find them?
They're the Anderson Chronicles, and my Kit Karson, and you can find me at kitkarson.com. That is my website.
kitkarson.com.
kitkarson.com.
And it's the Anderson Chronicles.
The Anderson Chronicles. Yeah.
And lastly, my random question. Imagine you have a time machine.
Mm-hmm.
The time machine is a car. So it's a car of your choice, whatever car you like. What car would it be? Where would you go? And what would be playing on the radio?
So I've been thinking about this because I've been listening to your podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, and enjoying it.
Thank you.
So I thought if I were going to go somewhere, I'd want to drive a car that fit into that time frame. So I was thinking like maybe 1920s Western Montana. I could maybe spy on my relatives from days gone by. I actually have some who were murderers and got away with it.
Nice.
So that book is coming out someday. that's a nonfiction. Anyway, so I was thinking maybe a Model T.
Yeah.
And I don't think they had radios.
They did not.
They did not. So I would have to, sing.
But it
Not very well.
so what would you be singing?
Oh, yeah. So I would have to, I probably wouldn't want to sing anything modern.
Well, it's nobody
yeah,
else.
it wouldn't matter, would it?
No.
I was raised Southern Baptist.
Nice.
I love the old hymns. So
Yes.
I would probably sing old hymns. Yes.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed it. It's flown by.
Yes, thank you. It's been delightful. And I'll talk to you again sometime, I hope.
Definitely. And there you have it. That was Kit Karson. And we were talking about her books, the Anderson Chronicles, which can be found at kitkarson.com, kitcarson.com. And yeah, what a wonderful conversation. The different ways to murder, how to murder, what would you cover it up, what would you do it, why would you do it? And in some aspect, I suppose we've all thought about it. To what depth, to what detail, that's to be debated. I would suggest to anybody listening to this, if you do get the urge, try to resist it. Just don't do it. And if you do it, do not let me know. I don't want to have any part of it. Obviously, I'm joking. Definitely don't do it. But as always, wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.